Welcome to the Galvanize with Gavin podcast. This is your host, baseball player and entrepreneur, Gavin Johns. This podcast will empower you to reach your fullest potential in life. Inspirational stories, keys to success, and practical methods to overcome life's challenges will be revealed. I encourage you to be the light in the lightning and spark a positive change in the world today. How's everyone doing? Welcome to the Galvanize with Gavin podcast. This is your host, Gavin Johns. Super excited for the podcast today. We have a great special guest on, family and sports chiropractor for over 20 years. He's an ordained pastor. And in 1999, he was the Wrangler Sports Chiropractor of the Year. He's helped hundreds and thousands of athletes in the world just
thousands
get back to where they need to be in their sport, and not just athletes, but a lot of different types of people, help them with their health. So without further ado, Dr. Toy, thank you so much for coming on.
Gavin, good to see you, buddy.
Absolutely.
It's been a minute. I think the last time I saw you, we were at your parents' house, and your dad was to you, me, and my boy. I think we were raking that day. Well, you and my boy were raking. I think maybe I was raking leaves out of your pool or something like
that. That's funny. Yeah, we put that cage to good use. Put in the hours. We got our money's worth.
I think he put one through a hole in the net. I think that ball's still in the air.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, yeah, like I said, Dr. Toy is a chiropractor in Temecula, California. So I wanted to ask Dr. Toy for everyone listening. You know, we have all different types of people listening, all different age groups and backgrounds. I wanted to ask you, for people who may not know exactly what a chiropractor is or what they do, what exactly is a chiropractor and what do they do? How do they help people?
Well, you know what, Gavin, when I first got into chiropractic, I thought everyone had already seen a chiropractor. And so I was kind of shocked that when new patients started to come in, I mean, probably 7 out of 10 had never seen a chiropractor before.
Wow.
And so now fast forward today, it's probably more like 1 out of 30 hasn't seen a chiropractor before. So I like to think most people know about it, but, you know, for those that don't, something that's been really cool because of YouTube and TikTok, it's like chiropractic adjustment videos are, you know, all over the internet. And so, you know, we didn't know how that was going to go at first, you know, if it was going to scare people away, but I think it kind of revealed that, you know, chiropractic isn't scary. It's being used by, you know, celebrities and athletes and all that. But the bottom line is, you know, we help fix people up with their aches and pains by way of spinal adjustments. And so, you know, when we get people coming in, if they haven't seen a chiropractor before, you know, we'll let them know. It's like, listen, you know, there's 2, you know, primary reasons why you're going to hurt. And one is you're going to pull a muscle. You know, we do it all the time. You know, you got people that are doing yard work. They're lifting cases of water at Costco. You know, they pull a muscle, but with time and rest, the muscle heals. But when something isn't going away, that's when it's typically coming from the spine. And so we'll explain to patients, you know, imagine if your shoulder just got partially dislocated. You know, you're still using it, but you know that something's not quite right. And so, you know, you try massage and you're like, well, that kind of felt good, but when the massage is over, it still doesn't feel right. Let's say you were to take muscle relaxants and you're like, I think that maybe did it. But then when the pill wears away, what happens? You still feel it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's not going to get better until somebody can reset it again. And so chiropractic, the same way. It's like because of sport injuries, because of auto accidents, our spine can get knocked out of alignment. Typically, it's not going to dislocate, but, you know, we get it knocked out of alignment. And until somebody sees a chiropractor to fix it, it's just not going to get better. And so then that's where we get people coming in, and for the first time, and, you know, you name it, they're finally getting the relief they're looking for.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. Yeah, I didn't know until, you know, just a couple of years ago, actually, you know, when I started getting more into, you know, the health and fitness and learning, you know, how important the spine is, you know, and being correctly aligned and how it's, you know, connected to everything in your body. That's kind of like the foundation.
Absolutely. And you know what? For people too that have never seen a chiropractor, just to kind of help put them at ease, I let them know that every professional team, whether it's MLB, NBA, football, hockey, they all have a team chiropractor. And so if they come in thinking, gosh, is chiropractic, is it scary? Does it really work? I let them know there's no way that these billion-dollar franchises, million-dollar athletes would be subjecting their bodies to chiropractic care, if it wasn't legit. And I mean, you're an athlete. Chiropractic in sports has been going on for a long time. And probably one of the first mega athletes that helped put chiropractic on the map was Joe Montana.
Mm.
And so for those, I mean, he was before your time, but there was a time where Joe Montana was, the greatest, quarterback in the world. And so if they come in thinking, gosh, is chiropractic, is it scary? Does it really work? I let them know there's no way that these billion-dollar franchises, million-dollar athletes would be subjecting their bodies to chiropractic care, if it wasn't legit. And I mean, you're an athlete. Chiropractic in sports has been going on for a long time. And probably one of the first mega athletes that helped put chiropractic on the map was Joe Montana.
Mm.
And so for those, I mean, he was before your time, but there was a time where Joe Montana was, the greatest, quarterback in the world. He's, won his 4 Super Bowls. And so he was being interviewed on live TV, and they said, "Hey, Joe, what's the secret to your success?" And he goes, "Well," actually, he's right here. He goes, "This is a chiropractor. His name was Dr. Nick Athens." And so Joe got adjusted on live TV, and that was like, the absolute best way that we could have ever, put, chiropractic in a positive light. And so, anyhow, so yeah, like I said, sports and chiropractic, it just goes hand in hand.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. My dad was telling me a little bit about your background and some of the teams you worked with. What were some of the teams specifically? If you can say them, if not, that's okay too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because we're in Temecula, we're not really that close to where the Chargers were in San Diego, or the Padres, or the Lakers. Everything was kind of far away. So actually, I never thought I was gonna have a professional athlete as part of my practice. But there was this semi-pro football league. They were called the Inland Empire Rams. And so they sought me out, and so I got to be their team doctor for a couple years. And so that was a fun, but probably the highlight of my my sporting career in chiropractic was is working professional rodeo. It's crazy. Well, I mean, being from Bakersfield, I was always around cowboys and everything. But after I graduated from chiropractic college, my buddy and I, we were taking these sports injuries classes to get our sports certification. And it was then that they said, "Hey, Wrangler wants to get behind a sports program." And they said they've seen chiropractors at rodeos just volunteering their time. And they said, well, if the chiropractor is going to be out here, the least we can do is help promote them. So they outfitted us in their Wrangler clothing. We had Wrangler Sports Chiropractic tents and banners. And so for the better part of 12 and a half years, I covered rodeos from Bakersfield all the way down to Brawley. And so for the first probably third of my career, everybody kind of knew me as a rodeo chiropractor. So that was kind of cool to set me apart from all the other chiropractors out there. And then we're in the Supercross motocross capital of the world. And so there's a writer by the name of Jeremy McGrath, and he's given me permission to use his name. But he's considered like the Michael Jordan of the sport. He won 7 world titles, and so I was lucky enough to get introduced to him. And so working with him, he put me on the map for the extreme sports, and even today I get a lot of the top racers coming in because of that first introduction to Jeremy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. You've had a lot of experience, helping a lot of elite athletes. in addition to getting chiropractic adjustments, how do elite athletes, the best of the best at the highest levels, how do they take care of their bodies? Because they're, working out every day, working out almost every day, playing games. They're taxing their bodies and their minds. How do they take care of themselves all around the day?
You know what, Gavin, that's a really good question. I'm sure it varies from athlete to athlete, but I see a lot of similarities, with the athletes that I work on, and it's basically kind of like it's a holistic approach. And so the most obvious ones, I think you even touched upon it. I mean, exercise. I mean, that's a given. I think in any sport, exercise is going to be a part of that. Same thing with nutrition. It's like the demands we put on the body. There's just certain things. Carbs, protein that athletes are going to need at a higher level than the average person. Third thing is rest. The fourth, I think, is having a positive mental approach, and five, healthcare. And so, like I said, 1 and 2, exercise, nutrition, that's pretty self-explanatory. Rest is something that was explained to me early in my career. And so, an athlete, they feel like if they're not training, if they're not practicing, they're getting by their competition. That's just kind of the mentality that they have. And so one of my buddies is a chiropractic buddy. He has his kinesiology degree through USC. He's gotten to work with Tiger Woods, and then before his name got tarnished, Lance Armstrong. He worked with Lance all 7 Tour de France's, and so very, very smart person. And he's the one that talked to me about the importance of rest. And he said most athletes, they don't get enough rest. And like I said, they think I just have to be out there training hard every day. And he says, you have to listen to the body. He says, if the body's breaking down, if you're fatigued, let's say you're exhausted on a Wednesday and you have a game or a race on the weekend. He says, the goal of training is to be able to peak for your game or peak for your race.
Yeah.
So he says, if you're already spent, he goes, is going into a workout at 50%, exhausting yourself more, going to help you perform at your best, come game day? And the answer is no. Same thing with an injury. We deal with injuries and people are like, well, can I go out there and still practice? And it's like, you're only going to make it worse. It's like you've already been practicing and training your whole life. Is one day off, really going to, affect, your performance? And it isn't. So you just have to get it through the athlete. You have to listen to the body. And my buddy had said, he goes, there's no award for being the best trainer in the world. You're not training to be called, hey, I'm the king of trainers. It's a funny thing to say, but you're training to be able to peak. And so part of that is going to be rest. And the fourth thing is mental approach. Any athlete, there's just a grind, and the sport of baseball, there's a lot of failure in that, so I just think it's really, really important. And I hear it from athletes is they have to feed their mind with positivity. They need to feed their mind with encouragement, and then whatever they need to do to do that. And sometimes you just have to turn the mind off. It does no good to replay, gosh, I went 0 for 5 in that game with 2 errors.
Yeah.
You just beat yourself up, and it's like, that does no good. So, you've got to be on top of your mental approach and your mental health, when it comes to being elite. And the last thing is healthcare. These athletes, they have a team of healthcare professionals to help them attain their maximum potential or to speed recovery. Just some of the common ones, you've got physical therapists, you've got massage therapists, acupuncture, cryotherapy has gotten really, really big over the last handful of years. And then of course, I've got to mention chiropractic just because that's, like you said, it's the foundation of everything. And so when I get my racers in, this is like the best analogy because they understand it. It's like, if you just ran the best race on your motorcycle or your race car, it's like, when you're done, do you just put a cover over it and then bring it out next week and hope it forms the same, next week? And they're like, well, no, it's exactly. You're going to tear the whole thing down. You're going to recalibrate it. You're going to retune it, readjust it so that going into the next race, it's going to be running its best. And so they don't take that same approach to the body. And so I explain, chiropractor is like a mechanic for your body. It's like your body's a bunch of parts, and your parts get stressed. Your parts can get, knocked out of alignment, especially in a contact sport. Football, there's no way you're coming out of that game, better than went into the game. And so anyhow, to be elite, again, everybody kind of has their own approach, but exercise, nutrition, rest, mental approach, and then having a good team of doctors in your corner is a necessity.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that knowledge, and I know a lot of people will take a lot out from that. You share and be able to apply that in their own life, and I've definitely learned over the years, just as you said, of having more balance in my life, and it's helped me perform, for baseball, like you said, being able at times to shut off the mind, and so I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
So when athletes or someone has an injury of some sort, you said, whether it's automotive accident or whatever it may be, I know from my life, sports injuries they're no fun, and oftentimes they can be a lot tougher mentally even than physically, and physically sometimes they're really difficult, so
right.
What encouragement, this is an inspirational podcast to empower people to keep going through whatever they're going through, and physical injury is, that's a challenge. That's some adversity. What would you say to encourage someone going through a difficult time with an injury?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's tough. Especially I've had patients that have had multiple season-ending injuries. I mean, to have one is tough. I've got one writer that's probably had about 4 season-ending injuries, and
Wow.
and the scar tissue that it puts on your mind to think, oh my gosh, this is happening again. The biggest thing I do is I'm as their doctor. You're sympathetic and you're empathetic. You're not going to be like, hey, just got to suck it up. I got a bunch of athletes in here that are getting hurt. It's like they need kind of a shoulder to cry on, and so I listen. And the biggest thing I think I do is I just kind of remind them they're not alone. Injuries happen to everybody, and a lot of the injuries that we see, I'll start with baseball players. We get a lot of travel ball kids in, and so they've got their open growth plates. We're talking 14, 15, 16-year-olds. So we see a lot of little league elbow, little league shoulder, and so they can fracture growth plates. And so those are things that you need to take serious. And you would think the world ended, when you get that X-ray and you're like, wow, yeah, your growth plate, you've got a fracture in it. Typically they're out, let's say 2-3 months. Okay. Then we get the extreme racers where we're just seeing a lot of fractures, a lot of broken bones, dislocated shoulders, broken collarbones that need a plate and screws put into them, and so they could be out 1, 2, 3 months. And so the biggest thing I let them know is like, what, it's unfortunate, it's going to happen to every athlete. And I tell them, what, get mad, get frustrated, and then let it go. Once you get over the emotional part of it, it's like, okay, now what can we do going forward to speed this process up? What can we do that you're better, today than what you were yesterday? And if you think about it, I mean, gosh, I was just thinking about, the guys that end up with Tommy John surgery. Better than anybody. It's just like they're out for a whole year. And then even when they come back, they're not performing, where they were when they left off. So as an athlete, if you're looking at like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at 3 months, that takes me out of my football season, or I'm looking at a year, I'm losing the whole season. That way, if you look at that, I mean, that's depressing, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
But if you're like, okay, listen, this is what we got, now what can you do? What can you control? What can you rehab? What can you do so that you get, better, faster? And if you just look at how fast COVID has flown by, I mean, can you believe we're approaching 3 years? So
Really?
it's
Wow.
like, right? And so if you look at it, if someone were to have said when COVID first said, hey guys, I know this sucks, but 3 years from now it's going to be gone.
Mm.
You're going to be like, oh my God, 3 years? Are you kidding me? But now look how fast it's gone.
Yeah.
So for the athlete, if you look at if you're like, oh my God, I'm looking at a year, it's like, that's the wrong way. Let's look at tomorrow. What can we do tomorrow? What can we do to get you through this week? And then, you'll find that time's going to fly, and all the emotional baggage that you first felt is hopefully going to be in the past, because now you're just focusing on the future.
Absolutely. No, that's a great perspective. When I was going through some of my injuries, something that also helped me, in addition to what you recommended, is just celebrating those small steps of progression. The recovery. When I got frustrated sometimes when I was doing the rehab, and I'm like, looking at the big picture, but instead, like you said, just focus on that day, and just getting 1%, more healed or more recovered each day. I think that definitely helps.
I love that, Gavin. I think a lot of your listeners are Christians. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. We have all types of people, but yeah, I'd say probably the majority.
So, what you said about the little victories along the way, not to get too into this, but, our daughter that works in the office, about 8 years ago, just before her senior year, she got leukemia. And so it was, one of the worst things that as a family, you can go through that diagnosis. And, one scripture that kept coming up was in First Thessalonians, where it says, be joyful, pray continually, and give thanks in all circumstances.
Wow.
And when God, put that one on me, I'm like, I don't want to be joyful. Are you kidding me? And so, just like when an athlete gets that, hey, this injury is going to put you out for the season. When you first get the diagnosis, I mean, it's crushing. But then when you're like, okay, this is what she has, now what can we do going forward? And so, even though it was brutal and very, very scary moments, it's like when a lab work ticked better, in her favor, it's like, we were holding on to that victory. And so that's where, we found joy, in the journey along the way, seeing her body recover, giving thanks for the circumstances of seeing her body, starting to recover and starting to heal. So anyhow, when you just said, seeing those little victories along the way, you just made me think of that journey we went through.
No, absolutely, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. That is, what God exactly wants us to do when we're going through a difficult time. He doesn't want us to have to go through it alone. He's there for everybody. If you're not a believer, I encourage you, if you are going through a difficult time, to talk with a friend who is a believer. Go to a local church, open up a Bible, and you won't regret it, because God will provide strength. He'll provide peace, just like Dr. Toy was saying, through painful moments, and more than anything the world can give. And just like you said, Dr. Toy, that when we have something taken away from us, each step that we come out of it, we just learn to appreciate more and more what we're given and what God blesses us with. So
yeah, so true.
Absolutely. So since we're we're talking about the faith. I wanted to stay in the faith realm before I go on to a couple other questions I had prepared for you. For you personally, what has your faith story been like? What's your testimony been like, would you say?
You know what? The one that I share most, because it's crazy. It's like, we all go through different seasons in our life, and I think there's different things going to be testing your faith.
Mm.
But the one that I've shared the most was early in my career as a chiropractor. I was focused on money. You know what? I was focused. I wanted to be a millionaire by the age of 30. So if you could look at my priority list, it was work, 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 sports, family, God. And so I was working, sometimes 7 days a week, open from 8 in the morning till 7 at night. The whole goal was to see as many patients as I could, because to me that meant generating money. And the crazy thing is, Gavin, is one day I looked at my business checking account, and I had $300 in it.
Wow.
And I'm like, and to run my office, my overhead was, let's say, $20,000 a month, to run the office. And I'm like, how could this be? It's like, I'm focused on money. I felt like I was being smart with my money. I'm doing everything I can to generate money. And all of a sudden the money wasn't there. And so, as you can imagine, I went into panic mode, and I'm just trying to think, where can I borrow money? Can I go back to my parents? And it's like, my mom and dad had already loaned me originally, $50,000, to help start my chiropractic business. And so I was like, I can't go back to them and ask them for more money. And so something crazy happens is our, and maybe not even that crazy, our friends had said, hey, would you like to go to church with us? And it had been, decades since I had gone to church. And so it was a little church, actually right off Murrieta Hot Springs Road, where the Calvary Conference Center, used to be. And I think it was called Grace Christian Fellowship, Church. And so I thought, what do I got to lose? It's like, I'm not happy with where the direction of my life was going. And so, we show up on a Sunday, and you're going to love the pastor's name. His name was Pastor Lucky. Oh my gosh, is this a sign? Is my luck going to turn around, Pastor Lucky? And so he said, I just pray whoever needs to hear this message is here today. He starts to talk about priorities, which I think is appropriate for what, we're talking about today. And this guy, he was a part-time pastor, but he was also in the business world. And he said, you know what? He goes, I got caught up in all the materialistic stuff. He says, I was working, I was making sales calls. He goes, all I wanted to do was to make money so I could buy stuff. And he said, I had my eyes set on this brand new, red truck that he wanted to buy. He had his eyes set on this, I guess, I was going to say kick ass. I can say that on your podcast, sound system that he wanted for his house. And so he was working towards that. And he said the harder that he worked towards that, it became harder and harder to achieve. The money just wasn't there. And so he just decided, you know what? He goes, where's my path? Where's my direction? What am I doing in life? And he says it was then and there that I changed my priority. He goes, it was work, family, and then God at the bottom. And he says, I had to change that. And he says, so once I started to put God at the top, followed by family, then followed by work, he says it was a amazing turnaround. He says it's crazy. He says all of a sudden the money was there, but yet my priority was on God. And he says the funny thing is, once I had the money, he goes, I didn't want the truck anymore. I didn't want the sound system anymore. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is the message I needed to hear today. And so he closed up in prayer. I went up to shake his hand, and I said, you know what? I'm the one that needed to hear that message today. Because like I said, I mean, my priority, Gavin, was work, 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 work. Sports and hobbies, family, and God was like distant last place. And so it was a wake up call. And I thought, you know what, I need to switch this around. And so, it's not going to happen overnight. Mentally, I wanted it to happen overnight, but I said, you know what, from today forward, whatever it takes, I'm going to try to put, God at the top. So Monday, the next day I go to work, we had the biggest collection day we've ever had. And then that week went on to be the biggest collection week we ever had. And then that month was the biggest collection month we ever had. And so from that point on, money was never, a concern again. And so I owe it all to Pastor Lucky and for showing me that, my priorities were out of alignment.
Wow. That's a powerful story. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Well, yeah, I know people are going to take encouragement out of that. It's super important, the priorities in life. And once you have, those priorities in order, obviously, like you said, it takes some time, but you'll find that, what I found too is, people will find that, their decision making is a lot more clear, when you have priorities, and it makes everything a lot easier. Like you said, when you don't have to worry about that, when God provides, he provides everything we need. And we don't have to keep striving and searching for things. And but you're right, he humbles us first a little bit before he blesses us, and so that's a great faith story. I really appreciate you sharing.
You're welcome.
So we'll stay on the faith here. I know you mentioned Jeremiah. Do you have any other Bible verses that you connect with that maybe have helped you through your life, that maybe can provide encouragement for anyone listening to this today?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually brought it. I don't know
Nice.
if you see this right here. I actually have it laminated.
Nice.
So I don't know if it shows. It is so old. It's actually discolored and everything on the back there. But it's Isaiah 12:2, and I can't tell you how many people I've actually shared this with. But when I'm having a bad day in the office, we all have bad days.
Of course.
I'll pull this out, and it's just a reminder where God just reminded me. He's like, hey, he goes, I got this. What are you worried about? It's like, everything's going to be fine. I got you. And so Isaiah 12:2 reads, behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For Yahweh the Lord is my strength and my song. He's also become my salvation. And so when I'm going through something tough, it's like, well, is this shocking God that I'm going through this right now? Or does he know exactly what's going on? And the trust is, can I trust him through this? And the answer is yes. And, it mentions about salvation. And it's like, if you have your salvation, I mean, you have everything. And so everything else is now, what are you worried about? And so, like, for example, for your listeners out there, let's say someone's, wondering, am I going to get into that college I want to get into? Are you going to trust in God's plan for your life? Can God use you if you don't make it into that college? The answer is yes. But can he use you if you do make it? Absolutely. Our daughter, could God use her? Could he use us if he decided to call her home? Absolutely. But now, can he use her and us because, he saved her? Absolutely. So again, when I'm having a bad day, sometimes I just need that reminder. It's like, God's like, I got this. You have your salvation. Just trust in me. Trust in me. I got this. So that's my go-to one.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a powerful one. I've heard, I think, parts of that one before, but not the full verse. So yeah, I really appreciate that. And just like you said,
I'll send it to you.
Well,
I'll take a screenshot and send it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll definitely save that and read it. I love, just, keeping the word on my mind, it's just so powerful, because like you said, life takes twists and turns. And um, when we, have Bible verses to lean on, they give us not only, comfort through those times, but also certainty, that God promises in his word that he's going to take care of us. He'll never leave us or forsake us, no matter how hard it gets. And just like you said, with that Bible verse you shared in Isaiah, that, when we're going through a tough time, he opens our mind and eyes to the bigger picture, what really matters, and just like you said, when we have that confidence in him that he's already, guaranteed that we're going to have eternal life, it takes a lot of pressure off everything else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, we talked a little bit, I'm kind of backtracking a little bit, but we talked a little bit about earlier, about how athletes and, just people in general, how they'll be able to maximize, their productivity by resting, by balance in their life, doing things they enjoy instead of always go, go, go. I wanted to ask you personally, what are some things, some hobbies you like doing that help you, stay fulfilled and, refresh for when you're going in work?
Well, I mean, my hobbies, golf is up there. Lately, it's been pickleball. Been going to the gym ever since college days. Dabbled with, bodybuilding and powerlifting, which has been fun now to, share with my boy in the gym. We have a place in Carlsbad, and so, we like to go on hikes through in Carlsbad. We have e-bikes now, like half the population, and so we'll take our e-bike up and down the coast. And it's, you feel like you're in vacation mode every weekend. And so those are the things I do to recharge my batteries.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. So for the last question, just wrapping up here, I wanted to ask you, kind of scrolling back at what we talked about in the beginning, about athletes, myself, been blessed to be, a professional athlete. And, obviously, I'm still pursuing that goal of, God willing, one day being a Major League Baseball player. But there's a lot of elite athletes, that are listening in here. I wanted to ask, what 3 keys to success would you say are vital for elite athletes?
Well, I think, for starters, you need to have a plan.
Mm.
I mean, I think that's almost a given. I think if you're just like, one day I want to be an elite athlete, and it's like, well, how do you plan on getting there? And it's like, I have no idea, but that's what I want to do. It's like, chances are it's not going to happen. Just with me and my business career, it's like, for me to be a successful chiropractor, I needed a plan. It's like, for starters, I needed a bank loan. And so if I walked into a bank, Gavin, and they're like, okay, well, tell us your plan, I'd be like, I don't really have one. I just know I'm a good chiropractor. And if I start, adjusting spines, I think I'm going to make it. There's no way they were going to loan me the money. They wanted to see that I did my due diligence. I did my demographic study. What are the income levels of the clientele, I'm trying to reach? What's my marketing, stuff like that. So you show them that you have a plan for success. I mean, the odds are, you're going to be successful. And so from an athlete, it's like, what's your game plan? My boy, when he was playing ball, my mantra to him was, hey, buddy, let's turn your weaknesses into strengths. That was, it's like, don't shy away. It's like, if you're struggling with bunting, don't ignore it. It's like, well, I'm just not going to bunt. Well, no, let's turn that into your strength, So have a plan and stick to it. I would say that's number one. Number 2, and you've probably heard this a lot, work harder than your competition. Work harder than your competition. I was a big fan of Kobe Bryant, been a Laker fan. I think we all know his work ethic and his, his Mamba mentality. How did he get there? It didn't happen overnight. And I Googled his work ethic, and there was this world's longest list of everything that he did that kind of set him apart from other people. And I just kind of put down like 4 of them. When he was in high school, he would get to the gym every day at 5 a.m. and shoot baskets for 2 hours before school would start. And I mean, most high school kids I know have a hard time getting out of bed, before 7 a.m. And so, Kobe had that drive at an early age. There's stories where, he'd play one-on-one games with his teammates. And if you ever played one-on-one, in basketball, you're going to 21. Kobe's games went to 100. You play one-on-one with Kobe, he's going to 100. And this is crazy, Gavin. His worst game ever in one-on-one against his teammates, he won 100-12, and that was his worst game. He won 100-12.
Wow.
So I think that just kind of shows, how hard, he wanted to just, beat down his competition. He would get to the gym 2 hours before practice and shoot baskets in the complete dark because no one was there to turn on the light yet. And I don't know anybody that's working that hard, doing it to that level. And this was a crazy one. He was on Team USA, when he was on the Olympic team. Yeah. He went to the gym at 4:15 in the morning, and he did not leave until 11, over 6 hours later, until he made 800 shots.
Wow.
800 shots. And so I love this quote too, because you're a baseball guy. This was by Derek Jeter. And he says, there may be more people that's got more talent than you, but there's no excuse for anyone to work harder than you do. So if you want to succeed in life, you want to succeed in sports, work harder than your competition. And then the third thing is, and I think this is huge, these weren't in any order. I actually think this should probably be number 1, and this is have a great support system. One of my favorite shows, I don't know if you watch it, it's on Netflix. It's called Drive to Succeed. It's about Formula One racing.
Okay.
It is one of the most popular shows on Netflix. And so it deals with Formula One race car racing. Some of these teams, Red Bull, Mercedes, they have upwards of 1,000 employees on the team to help their driver to win.
Wow.
So it's not one driver trying to do it on his own. It's a team of people, managers, mechanics, engineers, medical, transportation, you name it, 1,000 people to try to help their athlete to win. And I can't tell you how many dads I have coming in whose kids are in high school, and they're like, you know what, my boy doesn't talk to me anymore. It's like, he was my best friend, he was my buddy. And once he got to high school, it's almost like he wanted nothing to do with me anymore. And so for your listeners, the high schoolers, it's like, listen, if your sport was baseball, who took you to those little league games and those pony games when you were a kid, or the practices? Who was sitting there for hours at a time? Now who's buying you your jerseys or taking you, on travel ball, locations and paying for hotels and paying for lessons? I mean, no expensive that is. And so I think, you're going to have someone that's going to love you and support you more than your mom and dad. So you need a strong support system. And I would say, it's got to start with mom and dad. So those would be the 3 I would say, I think are really, really important for an elite athlete to succeed and also just to succeed in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Toy. And I'm definitely going to apply those to my life and hopefully everyone else can apply those to their life listening. Where can people find you at? If they're in Temecula or online, where's a good spot for them to follow you at?
Yeah, I mean the last name's like one of the easiest last names you can spell, Toy. So just anything, Dr. Toy. We're in Temecula. We're on Rancho California Road. what's crazy is with social media, people can reach out all over the world. And I had one guy reach out. He was a supercross motocross racer, and he's in some Middle East country. And so when he was reaching out, I had no idea where he was. I thought he wanted to come in and see me. And I'm like, just come by the office. We deal with this all the time. He's like, well, unfortunately, I'm in, this country. I'm like, okay. And so people reach out on Instagram, and you know what? I don't mind answering their questions. I love helping people. And so, if I can give them some advice, help them with their injury or life questions, I'm more than happy to do it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Toy.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Galvanize with Gavin podcast. I hope you were inspired and empowered to reach your fullest potential in life. For more resources, visit gavinjohns.com. For businesses interested in sponsoring the podcast, visit gavinjohns.com/sponsor. Thank you all, and God bless.